Hello everyone, ladies and gentlemen, kids of all ages. My name is Abby, and welcome back to episode 6 of Gregtech New Horizons. Last time, we completed diesel automation as well as making a few of our MV machines. Today, we're gonna hopefully finish off MV. But first, I'm looking through some old quests, and more so focusing on getting one specific quest completed in particular, the Hunger No More quest, which will give us the Healing Axe, which will eliminate all food concerns, period. I go on effectively a whole odyssey in order to complete this quest. A very boring odyssey, mind you. A lot of the things are relatively trivial to get. You have to get 8 of each garden, you have to get 20 of certain foods, most of them I already had. Took me forever to find this coconut though. And then you have to get 256 tofu. It's really not difficult. The thing is that I thought it was limited by MV. And I'm correct in that, kinda. It was limited by MV at first. Okay, so I started playing this mod pack in 2.7.0 when it was limited by MV. And now that I've upgraded to 2.7.2, I believe, it's no longer limited by MV. So I didn't really need to do that, but, well, whatever. Inefficiencies aside, the Healing Axe is a great addition to the arsenal because just holding the axe in your hand will automatically fill your saturation bar. The only thing it doesn't do, unfortunately, is it doesn't fill up the nutrition bars, except to 50%. So I won't get the toughness 5 buff, which is unfortunate, but not really that bad. It's a good enough trade-off. I start electrolyzing ruby. It's a good source of chrome and alumina. And I start writing the things down on my to-do list. Most of these things we're going to get done today. We're going to do polyethylene. We're going to get sulfuric acid set up. We're not going to do the oil drilling rig, but I did kind of set some things in motion for that. We're going to set up automated solar silicon, and that is on the agenda. Speaking of sulfuric acid, here's the sulfuric acid automation. You get hydrogen sulfide as a byproduct from oil processing, and, well, this will turn that hydrogen sulfide into sulfuric acid. It's a really easy process. Didn't take long at all to do. Sulfuric acid is the easiest of my projects to work on. I mean, it took 2 machines. But for my other projects, like polyethylene automation, I need to do a bit more work. I need to set up a big area for it. So let's get to it. While working on the whole place, I kind of got really bored of placing every block by hand. So I decided to look towards getting the Unbreakable Builder's Wand. It's actually a very, very easy quest to complete, much like the Healing Axe quest that we had early on, but even easier than that. It takes a large amount of stone, not even that much stone, bit of iron, bit of gold, bit of miscellaneous blocks from all over the place, but it is not a hard craft at all. Some of them are, for example, here's holy stone being made, but really it was just gathering a bunch of the resources. The only one that I didn't have on hand was emerald blocks, which took nothing more than a small and pretty trivial trip to the nether in order to fix that. Yeah, so the builder's wand that expedited my process of building the area and also allowed me to construct the roof a lot easier. So let's talk about the place that I made. The place that I made is 4 by 3 chunks. So it is 12 chunks of just flat ground that I'm able to work in and will be my future workshop for MV and HV and probably a decent bit of EV. There's a couple of small sections that are mostly for the single block machines, but I also made sure to leave plenty of space for our multi-block revolution. But we'll get to that much, much later. For right now, this is kind of it. I'm pretty proud with how it looks. It doesn't look bad at all. And yeah, there's also a bit of a foyer area that leads out of the oil room and straight and then ends up heading to the basement floor. But that is actually where we're going to be working next. I start making a boatload of machines, starting with 3 chemical reactors, and then 2 distilleries, and then 1 fluid heater. I need these machines because I am going to get to polyethylene automation. You see, polyethylene is required for a lot of components, from just simply mechanical components to uh, machine casings. It's required for a lot. And in this case, we're going to be working on getting that mostly automatically. So the method that I'm using to do it is a fairly simple one. It's one that allows me to utilize my already existing infrastructure. There's a lot of different ways to make polyethylene, but the way I'm going to be doing it is I'm going to be distilling oil into refinery gas. Then distilling oil into sulfuric gas, and then reacting that in a chemical reactor to get refinery gas, and then cracking that refinery gas with steam to get severely steam cracked refinery gas, and then distilling that severely steam cracked refinery gas into ethylene, and then reacting that with excess oxygen in order to get polyethylene. Now, what I've been doing for this whole interim while I've been talking is I've just been setting up the machines all in place for that. I also set up an electrolyzer, so the reaction that turns sulfuric gas into refinery gas, it's the same as the reaction that we were using to get light fuel and heavy fuel in the last episode. But you can also just turn the hydrogen sulfide that you get as a byproduct directly back into hydrogen and sulfur. So you can cycle the hydrogen through repeatedly. And while I don't do that for my oil setup, I will do it here because I really don't have a reason not to. Ethylene, which we get through this process, is also a useful material that we will use a decent amount of later on. In fact, we might have another couple of these setups just for making ethylene, because it's used for other things like acetic acid and whole bunches of other things. But for right now, this was focused on making a bunch of polyethylene because that is the most pressingly immediate thing we need, and also fairly simple. I remember my first GTNH playthrough, the way I was making polyethylene was extraordinarily hand-fed and very bad. But this is a really simple setup. I'm just setting up all the wiring for it. So for example, here's how we're getting the steam. We're heating up water in a fluid heater, and then the steam, which we're using to steam crack the refinery gas to then get the ethylene. The reason you want to steam crack the refinery gas is it makes the ethylene more uh, it gives a higher yield on the ethylene. The yield is like 8 times when you steam crack it. So that's the reason why you want to do that. It's not technically a necessary step, but it is a extraordinarily useful step. Here you can see the first bits of severely steam cracked refinery gas being made. I'm not going to get into all the logistics of how the wiring works out for this thing because it's actually really simple. It's just routing around cells every once in a while and then a couple bits of fluid logistics. So it's not terribly complicated. In fact, the wiring was extraordinarily easy to set up. The only issue is that I have so many pipes running all over the place that it was, that made it a little bit difficult. But the fluid auto outputs into a distillery, which will then automatically turn that into a little bit of ethylene and also some small carbon dust, which I sort of just have storing up in a barrel right now, but I will be voiding it eventually because obviously I don't need it for anything. But yeah, there we go. It's really, really simple. I forget to craft one important part, and that's the fluid solidifier, which is going to be for turning that molten polyethylene we're going to be making into polyethylene sheets or ingots. I originally think about turning it into polyethylene ingots, but I decided against it and just go for turning it into polyethylene. Or I originally tried turning it into polyethylene sheets, but then I decided to just go for ingots. It doesn't matter because we actually don't use the raw polyethylene that much. We mostly turn it into a liquid. And really, it's just that it's easier for me to store large amounts of items than it is for me to store large amounts of fluids. But yeah, there we go. This will solidify it into polyethylene ingots, or polyethylene sheets in this case. And that is pretty much automated polyethylene. Well, mostly automated. I don't have the oxygen being automatically supplied, and I don't actually do that for a long time. But that's fine, because the oxygen we can just send in bulk. And yeah. So polyethylene automation? Well, sort of. The thing is that the hydrogen sulfide, I made a mistake about it. I didn't actually know that the recipe that turns hydrogen sulfide into hydrogen and sulfur is MV only in an electrolyzer. So I have to change that later, or I had to change that later. But now with all of the wiring set up, or with all of the item logistics set up, it's time to set up the wiring. For it, I make two MV combustion generators, set it up to 2 transformers, and that's how we power it. 8 volts of LV power, because all of the machines there are LV. And honestly, we could probably be fine even with 4, because this thing does not run constantly at all. But whatever the case, there it is. That's pretty much the whole thing set up. I need to kind of stop it to let it build up a bit of a buffer, but there we go. With the connection finally made, the automation line is able to roar to life. This is kind of one of the first real bits of automation we're getting. Well, I guess we have the diesel automation, which is a bit more complete, but I feel really proud of this thing. It didn't take too long to set up at all, and polyethylene is such an important part of basically all of all of the rest of the pack. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing. And here's me figuring out that the hydrogen sulfide thing is not gonna work. But that aside, it pretty much works exactly the way I'd want it to. And yeah, here's me completing out the quest for polyethylene. It's just I don't know really what else to say. It is something that I'm very proud of because it happened to accidentally fit perfectly into the wall, which was fun. And also, it's something that I didn't really accomplish my first time playing Gregtech. Here, we're starting to get to the point where I'm playing Gregtech in a way that I hadn't really seen before. And the first thing we're going to use polyethylene for is for making SMD resistors. SMD stands for surface mounted device, and generally, what SMD components are is that they are far cheaper versions of other components that we have. So, our regular resistors, they take bunches of copper, a little bit of resin, whatever. These SMD resistors, they take electrum wire and some carbon, and a bit of polyethylene as well. And that's it. They're really cheap, allowing us to make resistors far more efficiently. And yeah. And here I am replacing the electrolyzer with an electrolyzer that will actually work. And I also need to set up the power for it too so that it would work. Not like I can run an MV machine off of LV power. That wouldn't work, obviously. So I set up 2 high amp transformers in order to allow it to work, with an annealed copper cable running in between it. I was slightly worried about the fluid heater, but I also really wasn't because it runs so occasionally, and also it doesn't even use that much power in order to heat up the water, so I wasn't terribly worried about it. That being said, there we go. Now it is actually automated, and it is producing all the hydrogen, and all the hydrogen is being routed around through it. It's just being cycled through. I will say thank you to Igor Stasenko in the comments of my last video for giving me the idea of using, or for telling me to use, the electrolyzer process instead. I'd say that, yeah, it is more useful in certain applications. I do think we'll still have some way of turning hydrogen sulfide into diluted sulfuric acid for our ultimate oil setup, but right now it works. Oh, and here I'm setting up the silicon dioxide array. So turning silicon dioxide into silicon dust through magnesium reduction. In this case, it only takes 2 machines, a chemical reactor and an electrolyzer, which turns the silicon back into, which turns the magnesia that we get as a product back into magnesium and oxygen. So, yeah. Now, what we need this for is we're going to need silicon for quite a few electronic applications fairly soon here. And silicon dusts, then we're getting a lot of silicon dioxide, but the silicon dust that we want specifically takes a bit of processing to get it out of there. Fortunately, this will do it for us automatically, so yeah. For this, I set up a filtered conveyor cover. It's a bit of a process, but it wasn't terribly complicated. And I'm able to just throw in silicon dioxide, and it will get me silicon dust. It will also get me a lot of oxygen as excess, which I end up using in order to power up my polyethylene production. I later end up just storing this oxygen as well in a different tank so that I can use it for powering my EBFs for certain recipes, but that we'll get to much later. Next on the upgrade chopping block is something that I should have done way longer ago, and that is swapping out the power ring for my electric blast furnace with a MV combustion generator, which will make things a lot better because I no longer need to wait 5 minutes from each EBF run of aluminum that I do, and instead can just do it constantly. I ended up having a break for a few when I first set it up, and honestly, I don't know why it broke. Apparently, this setup doesn't work, but whatever. I fix it later. I also end up finding a canyon because I need more aluminum. And to get more aluminum, you need more clay. And to get more clay, the easiest way to get more clay is to mine it out from a canyon. So, yeah, that's why I'm here. I also am going through a bunch of thermometer scanning, but yeah, the canyon for all the clay, for all the clay dust, for all the alumina, and a bit of lithium too. Here I am turning hydrogen and chlorine into hydrochloric acid for my first bits of solar silicon or poly-Si dust. Uh, the method for making solar silicon, there's two different ones. One goes through trichlorosilane, the other one doesn't. I honestly can't remember what the other one is. Well, this is the other one. And yeah, either way, it just makes it turns raw silicon dust into poly-Si dust, and it gives basically the same things as the byproducts. So it's ultimately where a reaction where basically nothing gets consumed. You just need it to go through a couple of intermediates along the way. Uh, in this case, I'm just doing the quest for the poly-Si dust. I'm not focusing on really uh, getting a renewable source of it. That I put in my docket for just a little bit later. And by later, I of course mean right now when I start setting up the area, the first of my areas in the basement. And this first area is going to be for poly-Si automation. It's an extremely simple process because it really only consumes silicon. It does not consume anything else. All the other products, which are usually just hydrogen and chlorine, just circle back through the system. So that's kind of going to be the idea here. All it is going to do is it's going to turn silicon into, in this case, I believe it is the trichlorosilane recipe, though I might be wrong. In fact, I am wrong. It is not the trichlorosilane recipe. It's going to turn. It's just going to cycle silicon through the recipe and get poly-Si dust. And that we're going to need in order to make something just a little bit later. We're going to need it to make silicon boules with 32 of the solar silicon dust and one of the gallium arsenide crystals. Gallium arsenide is fairly easy to make, so it's really the solar silicon that we need. That was the solar silicon that I had on my clipboard in the beginning, and well, now we have that finished. Solar silicon is a thing we're going to need a decent amount of because we need a lot of wafers. So that's what we're using it for. I should mention that the process that we're using to make solar silicon poly-Si dust is actually really, really slow, but that's fine. Anyways, what are we going to do with that silicon boule? Well, we're going to cut it, but not right now. For right now, we're setting up our future MV area. Yes, still for right now, my MV machines were being powered by a transformer, which is not what we should keep doing. We should power it with MV machines. So here we have setting up parallel to the LV solar silicon line. We have what will be our MV machine area. We won't actually need a lot of MV machines, but here we have it. And here I'm setting up my first three, the electrolyzer, the extruder, and the assembling machine that we had already made previously in the last episode. Which means, yes, we have not made a single new machine this episode, and we are already halfway through it. Didn't I say we were going to be finished with MV by the end of the episode? What's going on here? Well, the truth is, as I start working on a system to more quickly produce iron 3 chloride for me, MV is kind of a tier that we really don't care about. A lot of the gains that we get in MV are mostly speed-based, and we don't actually get a lot of access to new stuff to work around with. The extruder is very nice, and that's about it. We really just want to speed our way into HV because HV unlocks such a ridiculous amount more for us. We get a bunch new upgrades, a bunch new toys to play around with, and those toys are very, very good. But MV, there's not a lot. So MV is very much a tier that we're going to try and speed through, and that's what we're doing. We're getting the advanced cutting machine here so we can cut our monocrystalline silicon boules that we got into wafers. Uh, and so our goals for bypassing MV is obviously going to be to get the HV circuits and get the HV material. Those are our two main goals for any tier. For MV, it was obviously aluminum and MV circuits. And for HV, it's going to be stainless steel and HV circuits. Uh, and to make HV circuits, we're going to need a decent selection of wafers. And also, we're going to need to engrave those wafers, but that's a deal for a bit later. I make the advanced fluid extractor here so I can make vacuum tubes more efficiently, actually. You see, the most efficient vacuum tube recipe takes redstone alloy, or molten redstone alloy, and the recipe is like 8 times better when I use molten redstone alloy, so yeah, I want to use it. Mostly just, it's more efficient. More efficiency is always better. And that makes our first 5 MV machines, and we only get 5 more after this point, so you better count them. Speaking of one of those 5 MV machines, here's one of those. The Precision Laser Engravers. Remember I was talking about engraving wafers? This is how you do it. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be basically blasting wafers with energy using a certain lens in order to engrave them in a certain way. The real issue comes with getting those lenses. Those lenses, the main way you're meant to get them is by lathing exquisite gems or plates. However, I didn't realize that the lathe for the exquisite plate, the lathe that turns something into a lens from a plate, is an MV only recipe. And there's an issue with that. No, it wouldn't be a big issue. Oh, here I am mining out manganese from a grossular vein, because we're going to need manganese for stainless steel later. But let's get back to talking about the whole sort of problem with, oh, after making an advanced mixer, obviously. The whole problem with lenses. So I was sort of distracting myself from it, but this is a real problem. I can't. You see, the lathe in MV takes a flawless diamond, which I haven't gotten yet. And there's not really a way for me to get a flawless diamond unless I had a lathe. It's a bit of a catch-22 I'm in here. So I'm sort of running through recipes, seeing what I can do in order to get this green sapphire lens. And, I mean, the only real way I can see to get it would be either to get lucky or get lucky with small green sapphire ore, or get the MV lathe, which I can't make. Except, to get a flawless diamond, I could go for small diamond dust. Or I could go for sifting crushed diamond ore. But seeing the recipe, it's just sort of low in efficiency, so I didn't really want to do that. It's just not efficient. But there is another option, and that is using native diamond clusters instead. This is a very viable option, actually. I do need to do a bit of Thaumcraft research, but getting the native diamond clusters is actually what I ended up using in order to get my my flawless diamond. You see, native diamond clusters both take half the time to run through a sifter, so I said the sifter wouldn't need to run for as long, and it also doubles the output of doubles the chance of getting it as an output. Oh, and here I am making my first bits of stainless steel dust. Well, I'm doing a lot of multitasking here. And here's me making the sifter, which I need in order to actually process things through. The native diamond clusters are just a more efficient way of getting these flawless diamonds. So I decide to take my chances and go for it. And here I am, and, well, I just made it. And look at that. My first flawless diamond coming from the native diamond clusters. So, take that to the people who say that magic has no use in Gregtech. I just got my advanced lathe through a little bit of magic. Uh, and there's the green sapphire lens, which will allow me to make, I think it's the RAM wafers? Yes, it is, the RAM wafers. I kind of don't remember which one gets which, but with the RAM wafers, I can then make the RAM components, and that is required for all of the circuits that we have to tier up to get to HV. Now we're in the big games. But before we get into the really big games, I decide to make myself and move all of my crafting supplies down into the workshop with me. This is something that I have delayed for far too long. Anyways, let's talk about the game plan. So, stainless steel and integrated HV circuits. Stainless steel is relatively easy. We just make that in an electric blast furnace. It is not hard at all. It doesn't take too much time. It just takes oxygen and stainless steel dust. And we have the stuff for stainless steel dust. It is iron, nickel, chrome, and manganese. So nothing hard at all there. It is all super easy and all stuff we have. Here I am making more combustion generators so I can power my electric blast furnace better. Yes, I did forget to mention that the thing about stainless steel is that I do need a electric blast furnace that can take HV power, so I need 2 MV energy hackers for it. That's not really terribly complicated. It's nothing new. It does take UPIC wafers, but that's about it. And also here I'm making my first bits of plastic circuit boards, which I don't even use in this episode, so I honestly don't know why I made it, but there we go. And here I am resetting up my electric blast furnace to actually be down in the place with me. So, alright, to the game plan. The game plan, that is making the HV circuits. So to get the HV circuits, we have to make integrated circuits. Then we have to tier them up to good electronic circuits. And then we have to tier that up to the HV advanced circuits. Altogether, that's a bit of a crafting rabbit hole, but it's nothing that necessarily takes anything new for what we have. The only thing that's really new in the entire recipe is the fact that the LV circuits take diodes, which is slightly annoying, but wafers give us a better diode recipe, so it's actually not that bad. Plus, polyethylene gives us a better diode recipe, so it's actually really easy to get a bunch of diodes. And the fact that HV circuits take transistors to make. And I didn't really realize that was a problem. Oh, here's me making the first tier of the LV integrated circuits, by the way. I didn't realize that the transistors would be a problem, but they do actually become one. But really, it's a problem that we'd have run into anyway, so it's fine. There's the LV circuits first, and now it's time for the good integrated circuits, which it doesn't take anything too much more complicated either. With the good integrated circuits made, I expect the HV quests to open up, but they don't. And I was very confused by this. Turns out that in the interim between when I last played GTNH and when I am now playing GTNH, they changed how to make the transistors. You see, originally they took just regular silicon plates, but now they take solar silicon plates. And the thing about solar silicon is that to heat that up in an electric blast furnace, you need Canthal coils, which I don't have. Canthal is the second tier of coil for an electric blast furnace after copper nickel, and Canthal itself isn't terribly difficult to make. It's just that you have to cool it down, and you have to cool it down in a chemical bath using IC2 coolant instead. Because we don't have access to a vacuum freezer yet. Now, I could make the SMD transistors, which aren't super expensive, but I decided to bite the bullet, and because I know that I'm going to need Canthal anyway eventually, I make the MV chemical bath, and I start getting to work on hammering out the Canthal coils for an EBF. the whole process isn't even all that complicated. Camphor is an alloy of iron, aluminum, and nickel. So it's or iron, aluminum, and chrome. So it's actually really easy to make a lot of. And coolant is literally just lapis and water. All it is, it's a huge, huge time sink, really. Um, the Canthal, it takes forever in order to process through a heat bath, and it also takes forever to heat up in an EDF, so that's its own problem. It really just is a huge time commitment. So much of a time commitment that I decided that instead of replacing the coils on my first EBF, I might as well just make a second EBF as well in order to put the coils on. I mean, I'm going to need multiple EBFs eventually, so might as well make two of them now. And, well, I skipped a lot of it, but here's the Canthal coils being made. They take molten copper nickel to make, and they take a few more mica insulation sheets, but I've already shown how to make those before, and, well, you can make them a little more efficiently now. It's not any different. So, there's our Canthal coils, and there's going to be our first bits of poly-SI being melted up, which it also produces a hot ingot form, and that itself is not any different. So the hot ingot I have to run under IC2 coolant in order to get it cooled down. What I didn't realize is that the Canthal coils are actually even better than I thought. They can, if you have heat power that is 700 Kelvin above a heat recipe's requirements, it does a perfect 4-4 overclock, which means it takes 4 times the energy, but it runs 4 times as fast. And here we have me making my first transistors, which I'm going to need for my first HV advanced circuits. And with that, there it is. We've gotten stainless steel, which we need for the HV machine holes, and we've gotten advanced circuits, which we need for HV circuits. We're done. We got through MV tier today. We have our first HV circuits. We have our HV machine holes. We can make our HV machines now. Congrats. And will I make my first HV machine hole here? That's where I'm going to start ending off the episode as well. We got, honestly, a lot done today. Polyethylene, solar silicon, and the start of HV. But we have much more to explore. HV opens up a lot of options for multi-blocks, for single blocks, and just in terms of things we can do. And all that power lies within the things that we have accumulated today. Stay tuned, because starting HV is really just the beginning of Gregtech New Horizons. But what we're going to do with HV, what we're going to do with all that power that we now have access to, that'll be a question for next time.